It started like any other quiet Saturday. Sheriff Ray Carver, recently off rotation and enjoying a rare day in civilian clothes, was planting tomatoes in his front yard. His dog, Boone, napped nearby, a sprinkler hissed in the background, and the hum of suburban normalcy stretched across the cul-de-sac like a warm blanket. The kind of place where nothing ever happens. Until the truck pulled up. It wasn't a police cruiser, though it sure tried to look like one. Matte black, HOA security plastered on the sides, red-blue strobes on top. Two men stepped out, black tactical boots, utility belts, and matching vests with oversized patches that read compliance enforcement. Ray didn't flinch, but Boone let out a low growl. "You live here?" one of them asked. Approaching without a greeting, Ray stood, brushing dirt from his hands. "That a serious question?" The taller man thumbed through a fox leather citation pad. "You violated Code 6C, unapproved flora placement. And your dog's not secured. He's supposed to be leashed in common areas." Ray arched a brow. "This is my yard." The man's face tightened. "Sir, step back. We're issuing a citation." Ray didn't move. He watched the man's fingers hover near a taser holstered on his vest. The other enforcer began circling the property, snapping photos like he was documenting a crime scene. Ray said nothing. He let them finish their routine. But his silence wasn't submission, it was calculation. Every step they took was logged in his memory, every false claim filed away. They left a ticket stuck to his mailbox. "You'll be contacted," the taller one said. Ray nodded slowly, looking forward to it. That night, Ray sat in his home office. The citation spread out before him. It wasn't official, it wasn't even legal. The ID numbers were fake. The logo at the bottom was designed to look like a county seal, but it was a poor copy. A sloppy impersonation of real authority. He opened his browser, entered the HOA portal, and began reviewing recent board changes. What he found unsettled him. A recent vote approved the creation of a compliance and security task force, chaired by a man named Tate. No law enforcement background, no license, no accountability. Just authority, granted by a handful of residents who wanted the illusion of order. The next morning, Ray took a walk through the neighborhood. On the corner of Sycamore and Ridge, he spotted them again. Tate and his partner, this time interrogating a college-aged girl over improper vehicle placement. Her car wasn't even on the sidewalk. The girl looked nervous. Ray made a mental note. Fear was how they operated. He didn't approach, not yet. Instead, he turned and headed home. By the time he reached his driveway, a message had arrived on his phone. "We saw you interfering. Consider this your warning." Ray stared at the text, a number with no contact name. Then he looked up and saw the black truck parked at the end of his street. Watching, he took a long breath, turned, and walked into his garage. Inside, behind a locked cabinet, rested a star-shaped badge and a service pistol. They didn't know who they were playing with. Not yet. But they would. The black truck was gone the next morning, but Ray could still feel its presence like a stain on the street. He stood at his kitchen window sipping coffee. Eyes on the spot it had been parked, thinking about that text. "We saw you interfering." They weren't bluffing. Tate and his sidekick weren't just HOA busybodies, they were trying to play cops. And Ray knew the type. He'd arrested men like them before. Uniform fetishists. Wannabe commandos. Dangerous not because of what they knew, but because of what they thought they knew. Ray had no plans to run to the sheriff's department just yet. He preferred watching, gathering, letting people bury themselves in their own mistakes. Later that day, he walked to the mailbox, pretending to be just another neighbor. That's when he met Marlene. She was in her 70s. hunched over a flower bed that had clearly seen better days. The moment she saw him, her eyes lit up. "You're the new guy on Hawthorne, aren't you?" she said, wiping her hands on her apron. Ray nodded. "That's me, Ray Carver." She hesitated, glancing around. "Be careful," she whispered. "You don't want to end up on their list." He raised an eyebrow. "Whose list?" She leaned closer. "Those fake cops, the ones in the truck. My grandson got written up for letting the sprinkler run too long. They said it was wasting water. Gave him a fine for $200. Ray's jaw tightened. "Did he pay it? He's a teenager." He was scared. Thought it was real. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I tried to speak up at the last HOA meeting and got shouted down. Next day, I found my trash cans dumped across my yard." Ray glanced at the street cameras mounted on utility poles. "They have access to those. They said they do. They watch everything now." Ray thanked her and headed back home. Inside, he opened his secured laptop and accessed the county surveillance log. Those cameras were installed through a city contract, public safety only. No HOA should have clearance to view that footage. But someone had been logging in illegally. Someone using a guest login that traced back to an IP registered inside the HOA clubhouse. Ray's stomach turned. That night, just after sunset, he parked across from the clubhouse in an unmarked SUV. The lights inside were still on, and the parking lot was empty except for the HOA patrol truck, the same one that had harassed him. He zoomed in with a long lens camera and saw them, Colin and his partner, inside the security office, looking at multiple monitors. Then something caught his eye. They weren't just watching traffic or looking for cars parked wrong. They were looking into people's backyards. One screen showed a couple arguing behind closed patio doors. Another, a child playing in a sandbox. Cameras that weren't just from city poles, these were private feeds. Possibly hacked, possibly planted. Ray's pulse quickened. This wasn't HOA enforcement anymore. It was surveillance. Illegal, invasive, and dangerous. He leaned back in his seat, heart pounding, not from fear, but from focus. He'd been quiet long enough. As he started the engine, the patrol truck's headlights flashed once. They knew he was watching, but he smiled. Let them see. Let them feel brave. The next morning, he walked into the sheriff's office. Not as a civilian, but in full uniform. It was time they learned who they were really dealing with. Sheriff Ray Carver wasn't the kind of man to kick doors in without a warrant, unless the law demanded it. But now, the line between HOA overreach and criminal behavior had been crossed. What he saw in that clubhouse wasn't a policy violation. It was a crime scene in disguise. Ray returned home that morning and went straight to work. He pulled out a hard drive from a concealed safe beneath the floorboards. He'd used it during narcotics surveillance ops, encrypted, untraceable, and reliable. Over the next 2 days, he configured discrete cameras around his property, one in the birdhouse facing his front yard, another inside a garden gnome near the porch, and one overlooking the backyard from a tree branch. He wasn't paranoid. He was prepared, because deep down, he knew they weren't going to back off quietly. It happened faster than he expected. Late one evening, Ray was called into a multi-county briefing and had to leave the neighborhood for several hours. Boone, his loyal German shepherd, stayed home with the doors locked, alarms set, and cameras recording. When he returned just after midnight, something felt off. The backyard gate, which had been bolted shut, was slightly ajar. Ray entered the yard, carefully, flashlight sweeping the perimeter. That's when he saw a tin open container near his tool shed. It looked like a pesticide jug, uncapped and placed in clear view. A smell of ammonia clung to the air. Ray's instinct screamed one word, set up. He went inside immediately, pulled up the hidden camera feed, and froze. At exactly 9:42 p.m. The HOA patrol truck rolled to a stop just outside his house. A man exited, hood up, gloves on, and entered through the side fence using a set of keys. He carried something tucked under his arm. When he reached the shed, he bent down, set it by the door, and adjusted its position just so it would be clearly visible from the house. Then he walked away, calm and unhurried. Ray rewound the footage, paused, zoomed. It was Colin Tate. Ray stared at the frame, rage rising slow and cold. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. They were planting evidence. A fake hazardous materials complaint, one that could be reported to the county, triggering fines, property violations, even an arrest under the right circumstances. He printed stills of the video, documented everything, and began compiling a report. But he wasn't turning it in yet. No. He wanted to watch them sweat. The next morning, he let things play out. Just after 11 a.m., the HOA patrol truck returned, this time with both enforcers. They parked outside, knocked on Ray's door like they owned the place. He opened it, found discreetly recording in his pocket. "Sir," Colin began, "we received a report of an environmental hazard. You mind if we take a look around?" Ray smiled, friendly as ever. "Report from who?" Colin didn't answer. "Unless you've got a county-issued warrant," Ray said. "I suggest you take that truck and roll it back down the street." The second man puffed his chest. "You don't seem to understand. This is a compliance matter." Ray tilted his head. "You don't seem to understand. This house belongs to Sheriff Raymond Carver. And unless you want to find yourselves cuffed in the back of a real police cruiser, I suggest you walk away right now." For a moment, there was silence. The men glanced at each other. Then Colin cracked a forced smile. "No need for threats. We'll file it through the board." "You do that," Ray replied, and shut the door behind it. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from adrenaline. They'd flinched, cracks in their armor. They still didn't realize how deep they were in, but they would. He had everything he needed: video, audio, motive. All that was left was to follow the chain back to the HOA board itself and expose who gave these clowns the keys to the kingdom. The next 48 hours passed in deceptive silence. No patrol truck, no texts, no staged hazards. It was as if Colin Tate and his fake cop crew had disappeared. But Ray had been a lawman long enough to know quiet wasn't peace, it was plotting. And he was right. Friday evening, Ray left the county courthouse after a long day assisting with a task force brief. He wore plain clothes, no badge visible, driving his unmarked Ford Explorer. The sun dipped low, and the sky burned orange as he turned onto the winding road that led back into the HOA community. Half a mile from the gate, it happened. Flashing lights lit up behind him, red and blue. Strobes. But it wasn't a police cruiser. It was them. The black HOA patrol truck. Ray kept driving, slow and steady, toward the neighborhood entrance, until he reached a wide shoulder just outside the gate. He parked, placed his hands on the wheel, and waited. Two men approached, one with a radio, the other with a clipboard. No body cams, no dash cams, no visible weapons, just enough to bluff authority. The man with the clipboard rapped on Ray's window. "Step out of the vehicle." Ray didn't move. Under what authority? The man leaned in. "You were observed speeding in a restricted zone. HOA Regulation 8.3a. Ray looked him square in the eye. "You think you have the right to pull over a moving vehicle on a public road? You're within HOA perimeter. You're not law enforcement," Ray said, his voice flat. "You just committed a felony traffic stop. That's criminal impersonation, unlawful detainment." And if you reach for that clipboard again, it's also obstruction. The second man shifted, his confidence cracking. Ray reached into the glove box slowly, pulled out his badge, and held it up to the window. Sheriff of this county, now do me a favor and get back in your truck. The silence that followed was thick. Then the second man whispered something to the clipboard holder. They both backed up, slowly, turned around, and walked away. Ray waited, watched, let them retreat without escalating. But now it wasn't a game anymore. They tried to pull over a sworn officer. On camera, with lights mounted illegally. They didn't just cross the line, they set it on fire. Back home, Ray contacted dispatch and filed a formal incident report. Then he flagged the HOA patrol vehicle's plate to be pulled on site. Next step, identify who registered it, who insured it, and who was paying for it. The answer surprised even him. The HOA board had established a private security fund from raised dues over the past year, hidden in budget lines labeled neighborhood protection. They'd hired Colin Tate and his partner under the guise of third-party enforcers with no vetting, no background checks, and no legal licensing. And when Ray dug into Tate's background, again using state databases, this time he found something new. Colin had once applied to be a sheriff's deputy in another county. He failed out of academy training, not because of fitness or paperwork, because he threatened another cadet with a training weapon during a drill. Ray sat back in his chair, jaw tight. These men weren't just wannabes, they were dangerous. Given just enough power to believe they were unstoppable, and someone on the board was protecting them. That night, Ray did what he'd been waiting to do since day one. He scheduled a meeting not as a resident, but as the county sheriff with the HOA president and full board. And he made it very clear in the message, if you want to avoid charges, I suggest you cooperate. Bring everything, records, contracts, invoices, if it smells like cover-up. I'm coming back with warrants. There was no reply, but he didn't need one, because the next day, the clubhouse mysteriously closed for maintenance, and the surveillance equipment inside, it wouldn't stay hidden for long. By Monday morning, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. The closed for maintenance sign slapped onto the whole clubhouse door hadn't fooled anyone, especially not Ray Carver. The truth was, the so-called maintenance crew had arrived at midnight in an unmarked white van. Ray's cameras caught them unloading crates, slipping inside, and rolling down blackout shades. Not a single licensed contractor among them. No county permits. Just shadows and secrets. Ray didn't wait. He showed up at the HOA building that afternoon in full uniform, badge displayed, and a warrant in hand. Two deputies flanked him as he walked through the front doors. The receptionist, a nervous teenager pretending to be an admin, stammered when she saw him. We weren't expecting. You're not supposed to. Ray cut in. Where's Colin Tate? He doesn't work here directly. He's a contractor. Wrong answer. Ray nodded to his deputy, who opened the door to the security room in the back. What they found stunned even seasoned officers. 9 monitors lined the wall, each one displaying live feeds of private homes' backyards, side yards, interior windows. There were folders stacked on shelves marked with residents' names. Some had red tabs labeled flagged or monitor. Others contained printed photographs, time-stamped logs, and notes on everything from dog ownership to suspected political affiliations. But the worst was in a locked drawer they pried. Open inside were half a dozen fake HOA citations that mirrored real county notices only. They weren't official. They were designed to intimidate, to mimic government fines. Colin had even forged Ray's own sheriff's department logo on one of them. Forgery, surveillance, impersonation. This wasn't neighborhood enforcement. This was targeted harassment. Ray stood in the middle of the room, Heart pounding. He'd seen cartel intel rooms with less organization. This was no HOA security setup. This was a private operation built by amateurs with too much confidence and no idea of the law. They were breaking. He seized everything. The monitors, hard drives, folders, even the paper shredder. Every piece would go into the evidence chain. But the board wasn't done playing games. The HOA president, Amanda Brent, finally returned Ray's call. She sounded confident, arrogant. "This is a misunderstanding," she said coolly over the phone. Cullen's team was merely protecting our community. With crime rates going up, crime rates are down 12% this year. Ray cut in. "And you authorized illegal surveillance of private citizens." She didn't respond. Ray leaned into the silence. "You'd better cooperate, Amanda. Because when this goes public, it won't be just your position on the board at risk. It'll be your freedom, still." Amanda wouldn't confess, but someone else did. That night, Ray received an anonymous email from a burner address. It included scanned documents, meeting minutes, private messages between Cullen and Amanda, and most damning of all, a signed invoice from Amanda authorizing aggressive deterrence operations for flagged residents. One of the names listed, Raymond Carver. Ray stared at it, stunned. They hadn't just stumbled into targeting the sheriff. They knew exactly who he was. And they did it anyway. It wasn't just rogue contractors. The HOA board had actively greenlit surveillance, intimidation, and attempted framing, all under the illusion of compliance. Ray knew the charges were stacking: conspiracy, impersonation, unlawful surveillance, fraud. But Cullen Tate was still out there. And now, with the security room raided and the house of cards collapsing, he'd be desperate. Cornered. Dangerous. Ray closed his laptop and stood. He had one more piece to play. One last move to force the truth into the light. But he had to be ready, because if Cullen came for him again, it wouldn't be with a clipboard. By dawn the next morning, the HOA board's legal machine had kicked into overdrive. Lawyers, press releases, and hollow apologies flowed like water. They claimed the surveillance system was unauthorized and blamed Cullen Tate for going rogue. But Ray wasn't buying it. He had the invoices, the signatures, the command chain. He also had something else, a location ping. The burner email that exposed Amanda Brent. It had been sent from a known hotspot registered to the HOA's guest Wi-Fi. Cullen had been close to close when he exposed Amanda. That meant only one thing. He wasn't turning on the board. He was manipulating it, pitting them against each other. Buying time. Ray was convinced Cullen hadn't run. No. He was hiding somewhere close enough to monitor everything. Watching residents panic. Watching Ray close in. And that meant there was only one place left to look. The HOA clubhouse. The same building Ray had already raided. But he hadn't checked the basement. Most newer developments built in tornado zones included reinforced storm shelters. Clubhouses, especially, had them. And when Ray reviewed the clubhouse's blueprints, he found something chilling. A reinforced sublevel. No cameras, no windows. Accessible only by a locked staircase hidden behind a break room closet. A space perfect for hiding. Ray didn't wait for backup this time. He needed to move quietly, catch Cullen off guard. He grabbed a flashlight, radio, and sidearm. He wasn't going as the sheriff this time. He was going as bait. The clubhouse was dark when he arrived, save for the flicker of an exit sign near the back. Ray slipped inside through the side entrance. Every footstep echoed like a threat. The break room was exactly where the blueprint showed. Behind a row of cleaning supplies and janitorial bins was a narrow steel door with a deadbolt. Ray knelt and examined it, fresh scratch marks on the bolt. Someone had been locking it from the inside. He knocked once. Waited. Nothing. Then he knocked. Again, a whisper, faint but sharp, cut through the silence. Go away. Ray straightened. You already know who I am. Another pause. Then footsteps. A sliding bolt. The door cracked open. Ray didn't flinch when he saw him. Tate looked like a man cornered by his own shadow. His tactical vest was gone, replaced by a hoodie and jeans. His eyes were bloodshot, unblinking. In his right hand was a revolver held low, trembling. You should have left it alone. Cullen said softly. Ray didn't move. You impersonated an officer. You planted evidence. You used kids to spy on their neighbors. They let me. Cullen hissed. They wanted it. They paid for it. You still broke the law. Cullen's hand twitched. Ray kept his voice low, calm. You were never a cop, Cullen. You didn't earn that badge. You stole the costume and thought it made you real. You don't get it. Cullen spat. No one listened. The HOA needed order. I gave it to them. I made people feel safe. No, Ray said, stepping forward. You made people afraid. The revolver lifted halfway, then stopped. Ray didn't blink. Do something right, Ray said. For once. Cullen's hand shook. His lips trembled. Then he dropped the revolver. Ray kicked it away and moved fast, cuffing him in a clean, practiced motion. Cullen didn't resist. But as Ray walked him back up the steps, Cullen said one final thing that sent a chill down Ray's spine. You think it ends with me? He whispered. I was just the first. You've got no idea who else was in on it. Ray didn't respond, but as the door slammed shut behind them and squad cars lit up the driveway, he knew Cullen was telling the truth. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. Tate was in custody. The clubhouse had been cleared. The surveillance hard drives were being processed by the digital forensics team. But Sheriff Ray Carver wasn't celebrating, because Cullen's last words echoed like a warning shot. You've got no idea who else was in on it. And within 24 hours, Ray started to understand exactly what he meant. The morning after the arrest, the county's IT department decrypted one of the external drives seized from the HOA security room. It contained more than just surveillance. Videos, there were emails. Hundreds of them. Encrypted logs of conversations between Cullen and several names Ray hadn't expected. 3 were HOA board members. 1 was a city zoning official. And the last was a retired sheriff's deputy. A man Ray knew from a decade ago. A man who had once been pushed out for abusing his authority, and who now sat quietly on the community's architectural review committee. Ray scrolled through message after message, stomach twisting. These weren't just neighbors drunk on power. This was a deliberate system of control. They tracked which families voted against HOA measures. They monitored whose kids had disciplinary issues at school. They recorded complaints about fines and used that data to harass problem households. One line in particular stuck out. From an email Amanda Brent sent to Cullen. We need to make an example out of Carver. He's getting too comfortable. Start with a citation. Escalate if needed. They knew exactly who he was. They targeted him because of it. Ray clenched his jaw. The HOA board hadn't just hired the wrong man. They'd weaponized him. That evening, Ray attended the emergency board meeting held at the community center gym-packed wall to wall, with angry residents. Cameras from local news stations hovered outside. The board members looked shaken, defensive, and cornered. Amanda Brent sat like a statue in the middle seat, flanked by 2 lawyers who whispered constantly in her ears. Ray stood before them, uniform, crisp, evidence folder in hand. He didn't yell. He didn't rant. He told the truth. He laid out the surveillance, the staged evidence, the impersonation, the emails. The shadow database tracking residents. Gasps filled the room. A few people stood and shouted. Someone called Amanda a coward. Others wept quietly. Then Ray did something unexpected. He placed the forged citation with his name on it on the table in front of Amanda and leaned forward. You had the nerve to target me. But what about Marlene? What about the college student? Your thugs bullied over a parked car? The families you threatened to fine for hosting birthday parties? Amanda stared at the citation, jaw clenched tight. We protected this neighborhood, she said finally. People felt safer with Colin around. Ray stepped back. No, they felt silent. And silence isn't safety. It's fear. The vote to dissolve the board was swift and unanimous. Amanda and 2 other members were removed on the spot. Their lawyers announced their resignations 5 minutes later. But the night wasn't over. As Ray walked back to his truck, Boone trotting loyally at his side, a black SUV pulled up across the street. The window rolled down just enough for a voice to slip through. You made a lot of enemies today, Sheriff. Ray turned slowly. Then they should have stayed neighbors instead of trying to play gods. The SUV rolled off into the dark, tires whispering on the pavement. Ray watched it disappear. This wasn't just about Colin anymore. Or Amanda. There was something bigger still buried in this community. Something that didn't show up in HOA records or surveillance drives. And now, it was watching him. The SUV's warning didn't rattle Ray Carver. It confirmed what he already suspected. This had never been just a neighborhood dispute. It was a quiet war over control, surveillance, power, and he had walked straight into the hornet's nest wearing a badge they never expected to challenge them. But Ray wasn't done yet. 2 days after the board's removal, a fresh subpoena turned up the final piece of the puzzle. A series of bank records buried behind shell donations, labeled beautification fees, revealed a second fund. Hidden. Private. Its beneficiary? Vantage Ridge Security, LLC. The name wasn't familiar until Ray traced its registration address. It was a P.O. box rented 6 months ago. By Colin Tate. But here's where it spiraled. Vantage Ridge had processed payments from other HOA communities in the region, 5 total. All gated. All with similar complaints of aggressive security patrols, fake fines, and board silence. Colin wasn't acting alone. He was building something. A blueprint for HOA control private security disguised as neighborhood enforcement. Fed by resident dues and shielded by legal ambiguity. And the template had almost worked. Ray stared at the file for a long time. Somewhere deep down, he wondered how many more Colins were already patrolling small town streets across the county. Badges bought online, authority borrowed, silence enforced through fear. But Vantage Ridge was done. Ray handed the files to a federal investigator already monitoring HOA corruption rings. Charges were expanded from impersonation and surveillance to wire fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. It was bigger than he thought. But there was still one final loose end. Late one night, Ray was walking Boone along the eastern fence line near the retention pond when he noticed a dim light flickering behind the old HOA storage shed. He approached slowly. No flashlight. No sound. As he neared, the figure came into focus. Amanda Brent, no longer dressed in boardroom silk. Just a hoodie and jeans. A single cigarette glowing between her fingers. She didn't flinch when she saw him. I figured you'd find me, she said. I figured you'd run. Amanda laughed softly. To where? Everything was under my name. They'll pin it all on me. Ray studied her. So why are you still here? She turned, facing him fully. Because I wanted to win, Sheriff. I wanted to show that rules could make a perfect place. No crime. No arguments. Just order. Colin offered a way. And you never thought to ask what it cost. I did, she whispered. I just thought it was worth it. Ray stepped forward, pulled something from his coat, her resignation letter. Official now, signed and time-stamped. He handed it to her. Take the deal, he said. You testify. You cooperate. You might get to live outside a cell. Amanda stared at it. Her fingers trembled. I thought I was fixing something, she said. But maybe we just broke it faster. Ray turned to go. But as he walked away, her voice caught him. Carver, if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. He paused. Maybe, he said. But they wouldn't have made it this far. The next morning, Ray stood outside the community clubhouse as federal agents loaded crates of evidence into vans. The patrol truck, now stripped of its fake decals, was hauled onto a flatbed and driven out. Neighbors gathered silently on sidewalks. Some clapped. Others just watched. Ray gave them a nod but said nothing. Justice had come not with flashing lights or raised voices, but with quiet, patient steps. He returned to his yard, where Boone waited, picked up the trowel, planted the last of his tomatoes, the same garden they tried to cite him for. Before he turned back inside, he looked once more at the cold -d-sack. Peaceful. Ordinary. But now, real. No pretend cops. No secret WATCHLISTS. Just a sheriff, a home, and a warning forever etched in the minds of anyone tempted to abuse power. You can fake the badge, but you can't fake the law.